The Hamptons' summer gala was in full swing when Richard Montgomery walked through the grand entrance of his own mansion with a woman who was decidedly not his wife. Heads turned, champagne glasses froze midair, and conversations abruptly halted. The woman, Vanessa Carter, was visibly pregnant, her silver gown elegantly draped over her rounded belly, and Richard's protective hand rested on her lower back. Across the marble-floored ballroom, Elizabeth Montgomery stood watching, her face, an impenetrable mask of poise, cultivated through 15 years as the wife of one of New York's most powerful investment bankers. Only the slight trembling of her champagne flute betrayed any emotion. "Did you know about this?" whispered Charlotte, Elizabeth's oldest friend, gripping her arm. Elizabeth's emerald eyes never left her husband's face. "No," she said simply, her voice steady despite the hurricane raging inside her chest. Richard had finally spotted her. His confident stride faltered as their eyes locked across the sea of New York's elite. Whatever reaction he had expected from his wife, the calm, almost amused smile that graced her lips wasn't it. "I should probably go say hello to my husband and his guest," Elizabeth said, smoothing her crimson Valentino gown. "The gossip columns will expect a scene." "Liz, don't," Charlotte began. But Elizabeth was already gliding through the crowd, her posture perfect, her smile dazzling. The murmurs intensified as she approached the couple. Richard's face had drained of color, while Vanessa, barely 30, Elizabeth noted, looked like she might faint. "Richard, darling," Elizabeth's voice carried just enough to ensure those nearby could hear. "How thoughtful of you to finally introduce everyone to your assistant." Her smile never wavered as she turned to Vanessa. "Oh, I believe most people use email announcements for these sorts of workplace developments." "Elizabeth," Richard's voice was low, strained. "We should talk privately, should we?" Elizabeth tilted her head. "You didn't seem concerned about privacy when you walked in here with your pregnant mistress on your arm." Vanessa flinched at the word mistress, her hand protectively covering her belly. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Richard hissed, suddenly aware of the audience they had attracted. "I was going to tell you next week, after the Morgan acquisition closed." Elizabeth laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "How considerate of you to schedule your betrayal around your business calendar." "Mrs. Montgomery," Vanessa spoke for the first time, her voice small but determined. "I never meant to—" "I'm sure you didn't," Elizabeth cut her off, her smile now razor-sharp. "No one ever means to fall into bed with their married boss. It just happens, like rain or tax season." Richard grabbed Elizabeth's elbow, steering her toward a quieter corner. "Enough," he growled. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" Elizabeth pulled her arm free. "That's rich, Richard. Almost as rich as you're about to make me when I take half of everything you own." Richard's face transformed, his embarrassment morphing into smug confidence. "Actually, Elizabeth, that's what we need to discuss. You might want to check with our lawyers before making threats." Elizabeth's perfect composure slipped for just a moment, confusion flickering across her face. But before Richard could enjoy his small victory, his phone buzzed. Then again, and again, in rapid succession. As he pulled it from his pocket, Elizabeth's smile returned, this time with something dangerous glinting in her eyes. "You might want to take that," she said softly. "I believe the financial world waits for no man, not even one juggling two families." Richard's face turned ashen as he stared at his phone. Notification after notification flooded the screen-frantic texts from partners, breaking news alerts, and a particularly damning email from his CFO with the subject line, "Everything is falling apart. What did you do?" He whispered, looking up at Elizabeth with newfound fear in his eyes. Elizabeth took a delicate sip of her champagne. "I simply moved some chess pieces, darling. Nothing you wouldn't have done." Around them, Other guests were checking their phones, murmurs spreading through the gala like wildfire. Montgomery Financial Holdings stock was plummeting in after hours. Trading, down 40% and still falling. Reports of federal investigations and whistleblower testimonies dominated the financial news tickers. "You'll go down with me," Richard hissed, his knuckles white around his phone. "Everything we have is tied to the company." "Correction." Elizabeth leaned in, her voice a silken whisper. "Everything you have is tied to the company. I've been diversifying for quite some time." Vanessa approached cautiously, her hand resting on her belly. "Richard, what's happening?" Elizabeth glanced at the younger woman with something almost like pity. "You might want to reconsider your future plans, dear. Richard's about to become significantly less wealthy and possibly incarcerated." The ballroom doors burst open as two stern-faced men in dark suits entered, scanning the crowd before locking eyes on Richard, FBI. Not even attempting subtlety. "You leaked my offshore accounts," Richard realized, his voice hollow with disbelief. "How did you even know about Panama?" "I've been married to you for 15 years, Richard. Did you really think I was just planning charity galas and redecorating our summer homes?" Elizabeth's laugh was genuine this time. "I have an MBA from Wharton and ran my father's hedge fund before we met. You just preferred the trophy wife narrative." The FBI agents were making their way through the shocked crowd. Richard grabbed Elizabeth's wrist, desperation in his eyes. "Call them off. We can fix this." "I'm afraid the Department of Justice doesn't take instructions from me," Elizabeth said, removing his hand with cool precision, "though I did help them connect some dots." Vanessa was backing away, panic blooming across her face as she realized the full implications of what was happening. "You'll have nothing," Richard seethed. "The prenup is invalidated by your infidelity," Elizabeth finished for him. "And while Montgomery Financial may be finished, Montgomery Charitable Foundation, which I've quietly built over the past 5 years, is flourishing. I've moved most of my inheritance there." She straightened his tie with mock affection. "Perfectly legal, unlike your creative accounting. The FBI agents were only steps away now." Richard looked wildly around for an escape route, but the crowd had formed an inadvertent circle around the unfolding drama. "Mr. Montgomery," one agent announced, "we have some questions about your financial activities." "This is a mistake," Richard stammered, his confident facade crumbling completely. Elizabeth stepped back, removing herself from his orbit. "No, Richard. The mistake was thinking I would remain the silent, decorative wife while you built a life with someone else." She glanced at Vanessa's pregnant form. "Or should I say, someone else's." "What?" Richard's head snapped toward his mistress, genuine confusion in his eyes. Elizabeth smiled mysteriously as she turned to walk away. "You should have paid more attention to the details, Richard. That was always your weakness." As the agents led Richard toward the exit, the gathered elite of New York parted like the Red Sea, and Elizabeth Montgomery stood in the eye of the storm she had created, her crimson gown a flag of victory against the white marble floor dot 3 days after the gala. Richard sat in an interrogation room, his bespoke suit replaced by prison orange, his empire crumbling around him. The charges were numerous: tax evasion, wire fraud, money laundering. His lawyers looked grim. Bail had been denied due to flight risk. The door opened, and to his shock, Elizabeth walked in, immaculate in a navy Chanel suit. The guard nodded respectfully to her before closing the door. "You have 15 minutes, Mrs. Montgomery," he said. Richard's laugh was hollow. "Come to gloat? Actually, I came to give you clarity." Elizabeth sat across from him, placing a manila folder on the table. "You seemed confused about Vanessa's pregnancy. What game are you playing now?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "No game. Just facts." Elizabeth opened the folder and slid a document across. DNA test results. The baby isn't yours, Richard. He stared at the paper, disbelief warring with comprehension. This can't be right. Vanessa has been having an affair with your brother Michael for over a year. Elizabeth's voice was clinically detached. Originally, I thought she was just using you for money, but it seems the Montgomerys have a genetic predisposition for infidelity. Richard's face contorted with rage and betrayal. Michael, my own brother? Ironic, isn't it? Elizabeth crossed her legs. While you were destroying our marriage, your mistress was betraying you with your brother. How long have you known all this? Richard demanded. About your financial crimes? 3 years. About Vanessa and Michael? 6 months. Elizabeth's smile was thin. I was gathering evidence, planning my exit. Then you made the spectacularly stupid decision to bring your pregnant mistress to our gala. Richard slumped in his chair, the full weight of his situation crushing down on him. So this was all revenge. Not entirely. Elizabeth leaned forward. Consider it. Corporate restructuring. You are never going to leave me amicably. You were going to try to cheat me out of what was rightfully mine. I simply changed the game. What happens now? Richard asked, suddenly looking older than his 50 years. Now, I rebuild what's left of the legitimate parts of Montgomery Financial under a new name. The foundation continues its work. And you. She gestured to their surroundings. You have plenty of time to reflect. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're ruining Michael too, I assume? Actually, no. Elizabeth stood, smoothing her skirt. Michael came to me 6 weeks ago, confessed everything, and has been cooperating with the federal investigation. His testimony is particularly damning. For you, my own brother, Richard whispered, the betrayal settling into his bones. He made a deal to save himself and Vanessa, Elizabeth said with a shrug. Apparently, they're genuinely in love. Who would have thought? Richard lunged forward suddenly, his handcuffs clanking against the table. You orchestrated all of this. You manipulated everyone. The guard peeked in at the commotion, but Elizabeth waved him off with a reassuring smile. I didn't orchestrate your crimes, Richard, or your affair, or your brother's feelings for Vanessa. I simply observed, waited, and when the moment was right, she snapped her fingers. Chess, darling. It's all about seeing 5 moves ahead. She gathered her belongings, pausing at the door. Oh, can I visited your mother yesterday? She's decided to change her will. The family estate will be going to the foundation. Elizabeth's smile was radiant. Turns out, she always liked me better anyway. The door closed behind her, leaving Richard Montgomery, once king of New York finance, alone with the ruins of his life, betrayed by everyone he thought he controlled, undone by the woman he had underestimated for 15 years. 6 months after Richard's dramatic fall, Elizabeth sat in the sunlit breakfast nook of her Tribeca penthouse, reviewing quarterly reports for the newly formed Phoenix capital risen from the ashes of Montgomery Financial. The legitimate aspects of Richard's business had been salvaged under her expert guidance, and the company was slowly rebuilding its reputation. A soft knock on the doorframe pulled her attention away from the numbers. James Anderson, her security chief and right-hand man for the past decade, stood with a manila envelope. It's from the fertility clinic, he said quietly, placing it before her. Elizabeth's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for it. Only sign of emotion she'd allow herself to display. Thank you, James. When he had gone, she opened the envelope and read the contents, a complex mix of emotions washing over her normally composed features. After a moment, she reached for her phone and made a call. Dr. Matthews? It's Elizabeth Montgomery. The results came in. When can we proceed? 2 hours later, Elizabeth sat in the private patient room of Manhattan's most exclusive fertility clinic, facing Dr. Matthews across her polished desk. "The embryos are still viable, Mrs. Montgomery," the doctor confirmed. "All 5 of them, preserved exactly as you requested 7 years ago." Elizabeth nodded, absorbing this information. "And the surrogacy arrangements?" "All in place. We can begin the process next month, as discussed." 7 years earlier, when Elizabeth had first discovered Richard's wandering eye, she had taken a secret insurance policy harvesting and freezing embryos created with Richard's sperm, obtained during a brief period when he had actually considered having children. He had quickly changed his mind, claiming his empire building. Left no time for fatherhood, but Elizabeth had kept the embryos frozen, just in case. Richard never knew. It was one secret she had kept even from her investigator's dot. As Elizabeth left the clinic, her driver held the door to her Mercedes. "Where to, Mrs. Montgomery?" "The Women's Correctional Facility in Bedford Hills," she replied. "I have a visitor's appointment with Vanessa Carter." Vanessa had given birth 3 months earlier to a healthy baby boy, before beginning her 2-year sentence for financial fraud. Her cooperation had earned her a reduced sentence, but not immunity. When Elizabeth was shown into the visiting area, Vanessa was already waiting, the prison jumpsuit hanging loosely on her post-pregnancy frame. The confident mistress was gone, replaced by a woman humbled by consequences. "Mrs. Montgomery," Vanessa said, surprise evident in her voice. "I didn't expect to ever see you again. Please, call me Elizabeth." She sat across from Vanessa. "I came to discuss your son's future." Fear flashed across Vanessa's face. "Michael has custody while I'm in here." "We've arranged—" "Michael is doing well at the foundation," Elizabeth interrupted. "His financial skills are being put to better use than his brother's were. But raising a child alone while rebuilding a career is challenging. What are you suggesting?" Vanessa asked warily. Elizabeth placed a folder on the table between them. "A trust fund for your son, and a position waiting for you at Phoenix Capital when you're released. Your financial expertise shouldn't go to waste." Vanessa stared at her, bewildered. "Why would you help me? After everything... Elizabeth's smile contained layers of meaning. "Let's just say I understand making difficult choices better than most." She stood to leave. "Oh, and I've arranged expanded visitation rights for you with your son. Children should know their mothers." As she walked away, Vanessa called after her. "I don't understand you, Elizabeth. Is this guilt? Manipulation? What game are you playing now?" Elizabeth paused, turning back. "No game, Vanessa. Just chess. And in chess, the queen protects the future kings and queens." Her hand drifted momentarily to her stomach, a gesture so subtle Vanessa almost missed it, even the ones who don't exist yet. 18 months later, Richard Montgomery sat in the prison visiting room, his once imposing frame now gaunt, his hair grayer than his 52 years warranted. When the guard announced his visitor, he expected his lawyer with more bad news about his appeals. Instead, Elizabeth walked in, more radiant than he remembered, wearing a simple yet elegant cream pantsuit that probably cost more than most inmates earned in 5 years of prison labor. "You look well," he said flatly, the bitterness evident in his voice. "Phoenix Capital is thriving," she replied, taking the seat across from him. "We've surpassed Montgomery Financial's legitimate peak earnings." Richard's jaw tightened. "Is that why you came? To rub your success in my face?" "No." Elizabeth's expression softened unexpectedly. "I came because it's time you knew everything. What more could there possibly be?" Richard scoffed. Elizabeth opened her handbag and removed a photograph, sliding it across the table. Richard looked down, confusion crossing his features as he stared at an image of a nursery exquisitely decorated in pale green and gold, with 2 identical cribs. "What is this? Your daughter's?" Elizabeth said simply. Charlotte and Catherine Montgomery, 3 months old. Richard's head snapped up, disbelief etched into every line of his face. That's impossible. Not with modern medicine. Elizabeth's calm was unshakable. Remember when we briefly discussed having children? Before you decided your empire was more important. Understanding dawned slowly across Richard's features. The fertility consultation, the samples I gave, ... I kept the embryos. Elizabeth's voice remained steady. 5 healthy embryos created before your affairs, your crimes, your betrayals. Before you brought your pregnant mistress to our gala. Richard stared at the photograph again, his hands trembling slightly. 2 perfect infants with tufts of dark hair, Montgomery hair, and eyes that even in a photograph were unmistakably his. You had my children without telling me? His voice cracked with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. While I've been sitting in prison? I created my own legacy, Elizabeth corrected. With genetic material you willingly provided when you were still the man I married. She took back the photograph, her fingers tracing the babies' faces with genuine tenderness. They'll inherit everything Phoenix Capital, the foundation, the family properties. All of it built by a Montgomery, inherited by Montgomerys. Richard leaned forward, his handcuffs clinking against the metal table. I have rights. Actually, you don't. Elizabeth's smile returned, the chess master back in control. Your parental rights were legally severed when you signed the divorce papers. Page 17, paragraph 4, a clause your rushed legal team overlooked while trying to salvage whatever assets they could for you. The silence between them stretched, heavy with the weight of what could have been. Why tell me at all? Richard finally asked, deflated. Because despite everything, you deserve to know your bloodline continues. Elizabeth's expression held unexpected compassion. And because when they're old enough to ask, I'll tell them the truth about their father. All of it, the brilliant businessman and the flawed man. She stood to leave but hesitated. Your sentence makes you eligible for parole in 12 years. They'll be teenagers then. She placed a second photograph on the table, this one of herself holding both infants. This is yours to keep. What kind of man they meet when they're old enough ... That's up to you. As Elizabeth walked away, Richard called after her, his voice stripped of arrogance for perhaps the first time in his life. Elizabeth, will you bring them to see me someday? She paused at the door, looking back at the man who had once been the center of her world. Rebuild yourself first, Richard. Become someone worthy of them. Her final smile held both challenge and surprisingly hope. I've always believed in the power of redemption, even for you. When she was gone, Richard Montgomery, former titan of finance, disgraced husband, unexpected father, stared at the photograph of the family he'd never known he wanted until it was beyond his reach. For the first time since his empire crumbled, he felt something stir within him that he thought had died in that interrogation room 18 months ago. Purpose. His wife's final secret had indeed left him speechless, not with rage or betrayal, but with the sudden, overwhelming desire to become worthy of the legacy Elizabeth had created from the ashes of his mistakes.